And today on our big story, we bring you a big but necessary story. Nicotine is quietly reshaping youth health in Nigeria. Once associated mainly with cigarette smoking, nicotine consumption has definitely evolved. Today, vaping devices, flavored cartridges, and other delivery systems have made access easier and addiction less visible. Health experts warn that what appears modern and harmless may carry long-term consequences.
Now, the concern is not just about habit, but also about biology. Adolescence is a critical stage of brain development. Exposure to addictive substances during this window can actually affect behavior and also concentration and long-term health outcomes as well. So, joining us is Professor Alera Roberts of the College of Medicine, University of Lagos. Doctor, you're welcome. Thank you very much for joining us on a Sunday morning. It's always grand to have someone as grand as you here on the show today.
Those devices, as you can see them on the table,
good to have you,
are sleek.
Now,
flavored in
I would like to know from your clinical and academic experience, doctor, how rapidly is nicotine exposure actually increasing among Nigerian youth?
Well, sadly, it's a rather unreported condition that we're talking about, and it appears to be going up really rapidly. We've got studies in Ibadan and other parts of the country that show prevalence rates of as little as 3% or as high as 18%, with the average looking at about 11.4% use among adolescents in Nigeria. And that is rather alarming because, 20 years ago, we didn't even have any prevalence rate, or prevalence rates were less than 1-2%. So there's definitely an increase, and the speed at which it is growing, we cannot scientifically say, but it is definitely at an alarming rate. The problem, of course, is the underreporting.
Well, scientifically, you may not be able to tell, but I could give you a testimony here that I smoked for a good 2 decades, but I had a scare when I switched to vaping. And I'm bringing that up because it wasn't as bad when I was a smoker, but when I switched to vaping, I actually realized and noticed very tangible changes in my health. And we see this transference, this transition from actual cigarettes to vaping, especially amongst the youth. And I'm wondering what concerns, what policies are in place, what bodies are looking at these instances and making changes.
Well, Mazino, you are very brave to come out and give a personal testimony, and you're very right. Because while nicotine itself does pose significant neurological risk, the practice of vaping adds an additional host of toxic substances to the brain. People don't realize that the aerosol produced by e-cigarettes is not merely water vapor. It contains a complex mixture of chemicals which have demonstrated neurotoxic potential. And what we're seeing is that, the social marketing for vaping and e-cigarettes, that it's a less harmful alternative to cigarette smoking, actually targets adolescents. And that is where the danger really lies.
Doctor, if I may, before we go on a break very quickly, you mentioned that the danger really lies when it starts within the youth. Can you give us, outside of the fact that everybody knows that if I'm going to smoke, I'll probably have like lung cancer or whatever within the lungs, can you give us a bit of a more scientific explanation as to what the implications are, especially when you start smoking at an early age?
The issue with the addiction to nicotine is that it's what we call a negative effect, in the sense that you continue seeking out the substance to reduce the negative effects of the withdrawal. So that's the problem. You smoke and you've got this high, you've got all the neurotoxic and neurological changes going on. And then when you don't smoke for a while, and for a while maybe as little as a couple of hours, that negative effects of withdrawal makes you feel antsy, you start, feeling so bad, you seek out another cigarette. And that's the problem. So the cravings and the withdrawal symptoms are much faster in the younger people because their brains are younger and their brains need these withdrawal effects, find these withdrawal effects more devastating, much faster.
Doctor, I'm going to come back and we're going to talk about marketing of these products and also policy changes that need to be made. But let's take a very short break now, and when we come back, we'll address those. We'll be back. And you're welcome back. From before, we were talking about nicotine addiction and its prevalence in Nigerian youth. We had with us Dr. Alero, who's been talking to us about the disadvantages, especially at starting at a very young age. Doctor, before the break, I wanted to talk about marketing and the concerns that I have with marketing of these products. Back in the 90s, I believe that there were policies that make it impossible for you to advertise on traditional media. But we still see that cigarettes are still openly sold. There might be very little regulation around them. There was supposed to be a policy where you can't sell single units, but only in packs. This was to make it maybe unattainable by youth at the time. But now we see the alternative vaping coming into the culture, and it seems to have taken over. In fact, it's looked at as a way of life, as a certain, I don't know what the word is in, and what word can I use? When it represents a certain class of people. So we haven't done anything about vaping in our policy reforms when it comes to health. What is being done? What do we not know about?
Culture has normalized vaping and e-cigarette smoking and kind of made it look cool, become socially acceptable. Tobacco and the e-vaping, e-cigarette industries have, leveraged on this to employ very marketing strategies that target the large youth population, target youth vulnerabilities. They've got social, I don't want to name names, that where pro-vaping content is acceptable and is prevalent and is promoted by influencers. I mean, everybody wants to be a social media influencer and so on. Of course, the wide array of products that are available, I walk into most supermarkets around where I live, and I'm shocked. Right behind the cash register, you can see flavored, and they just look so attractive. They smell sweetish, they smell florally, they smell good, and they're there. These are the e-vaping products that are there, and of course, because it's now seen as almost as a status symbol among the adolescents, that reinforces the peer culture that's going on. So it's something that parents, caregivers, we really do need to take a very strong, hard look at and identify that gap in both policy formulation and policy implementation, enforcement and sanctions.
Doctor, I wanted to just piggyback on what you just said, especially from the community and the need for, parents as a whole. It takes a village. What are the societal breaches in society that make it an easy thing for the youth to find it easily accessible to smoke, to acquire all of these necessary things? Where is community failing? Before we even get to the government, where are the breaches in community that allow this to take place?
Thank you, Inam. That is actually the most important question. And, I must put my cards on the table here. I'm a public health physician. So whatever I say, I'm saying first and foremost to the public. Because ultimately, as an individual, as a member of the public, we owe a responsibility to ourselves for our own health. And I think the first gap, because since we discussed this and I looked back on it, our first gap is that parents, caregivers, a certain generation are completely unaware of what is going on. They're completely unaware of what adolescents are doing. And we think that, the only crime they have is that they are pressing phone all the time, without us actually being aware of what they're doing on those devices, of what they're doing, who they're talking to, who is talking to them, because we see them in the house, we see them at home, we see them, nearby. We don't realize that they are actually speaking with the world and being influenced by the world right under our noses. So the first thing I'm going to tell the public, the community, the first failing we have is we aware of what the young ones are getting on with right under our noses.
Dr. Lara Roberts, it's very hard for the older generation to understand some of these things that are happening now. While they were used to sticks being smoked, now we have devices that you can charge that light up and then you can still. So if you can help us, how exactly, when it comes to vaping, does that work? We know it's vapor being inhaled and exhaled. How does the nicotine get in there, and how does it affect you anatomically and neurologically?
That is a whole 5-year medicine course. So do we have time for that? I mean, that is a whole 5-year pharmacy course on the neurobiology of addictions and what the different, because there are so many toxic substances particularly in the e-cigarettes, and that even go beyond what the nicotine is doing. So we really don't have that much. But what is sufficing to say that those toxic effects on the brain are almost permanent.
Oh wow!
That the damage is that takes the brain a very long time to recover. We know that nicotine addiction, e-vaping addiction are on off, even despite many years of not smoking. They are at the highest risk of, as we say, falling off the wagon much faster than any other addiction. And that's the problem that we have. The pathway to recovery is very challenging. Nicotine addiction is classified actually as a chronic relapsing disorder. The changes to the brain are many and myriad, and it affects what we call the frontal cortex, the reward section of the brain. That's part of the brain that's always seeking out a reward.
So, doctor, today I need you to help us set the record straight, because many young people see, first of all, vaping as safer than cigarettes. Others, if you try and have the argument about vaping not safer, then they'll tell you about shisha.
No.
And they'll say, well, this is a bit safer. Can you set the record straight for us today with the vaping and the shisha? How significantly accurate is this belief?
It is wrong. There's no accuracy about it at all. Vaping is significantly more dangerous than cigarette smoking, nicotine, in terms of the fact that it's far more insidious. It presents itself as being harmless, socially acceptable. Both the shisha, the vaping, the e-cigarettes, that in effect makes it far more dangerous. It's so many things. The hidden dangers, the fact that there are so many more additional toxic substances that are produced by e-cigarettes that affect the brain, and that damage to the brain can be pretty much almost permanent if we're not careful. I mean, we've got heavy metals, lead, arsenic, we've got carcinogens, even formaldehyde, the chemical that we use to preserve dead bodies. Benzenes, of course, the synthetic coolants and flavoring agents. We have no idea of the long-term effects on the brain that some of these substances cause. And when we are introduced, when the young and adolescent brain is introduced at an early age, don't forget that the brain is continuing to mature, but the prefrontal cortex, that region that is important for impulse control and decision making, is the one that is being hit the hardest. That's the one undergoing significant development in the mid-teens to mid-20s, and that is when you're damaging the prefrontal cortex with all these chemicals, and there's another danger. Even if the adolescent here, himself or herself, are not smoking, there's the danger of second-hand and even third-hand exposure that we are not even sure of. So you've gone to a party, others are smoking, not you, but you're in the vicinity, you're inhaling all these substances, and you're getting your brain damaged at the same time. It's it's frightening.
It's
really frightening.
It is very, very concerning, Doctor. While we're talking about the variant or the alternatives from e-cigarettes, from cigarettes to e-cigarettes, there's also another school of thought. I don't have a better way to explain it, but where people believe that substances like marijuana are actually natural and hence are safer than e-cigarettes or cigarettes themselves. Could you dispel that myth, please?
I will have to dispel that myth. In the end, it's very simple. There are a lot of substances that are natural that we do not take. Everybody will tell you about poisoned mushrooms, mushrooms that are poisonous as opposed to mushrooms that are edible. The fact that they are natural, we know there are some species of mushrooms that you must not take. And children are advised and warned, don't just pick anything and put it in your mouth. There are berries that grow on trees that we know are not safe. They occur naturally. So why would we think that simply because marijuana occurs naturally, it's safe for consumption? It's not. We know the damage that it can do, short-term and long-term. So the problem is that, if parents are not aware of what is going on, and they are not paying attention to what is going on, both outside the home and within the home, then we are getting a lot more of these adolescent addictions going on.
So, Doctor, just to clarify on that, because we know that in some instances now, marijuana is prescribed to sometimes chronically ill patients as well.
Exactly.
Can you give us an understanding as to, is that a short-term prescription and what exactly it's supposed to treat?
Again, shall we go back to 5 years of medicine and 5 years of pharmacy? You are right. There are a lot of substances, not substances, the right word I should use are products, plant products that are very, very useful in differing doses and different combinations. So yes, but I don't know that it's a subject I want to take on for the public, but yes, there are some instances where we use drugs that can be potentially harmful in specific doses at specific times for specific conditions. One of the things you have to think about are the cancer drugs, for example. Extremely poisonous, extremely damaging, but yes, they have some use. They have uses in the treatment of cancer, but please first have the cancer, be diagnosed by a doctor, and be prescribed, because the side effects can be really harsh. And that's the same way we need to look at the use of medical marijuana, medical cannabis, and so on. They've got a great deal of use, particularly in palliative care, end-stage, end-of-life care for people with cancer. But that doesn't mean that it is there and it's useful for the whole public.
Dr. Alero Roberts, I want to say thank you very much. To add to that, I think there's also the comparison to be made with vaccines and the actual disease that they treat. The vaccines are actually viruses themselves. Dr. Alero Roberts, thank you for this quick course in the use of nicotine and how bad it might be for us, especially as youths. It's always a pleasure to have you, like I said from before, and we're looking forward to another session where we get to have you here. Hopefully it won't be a Sunday, but if we do ask on a Sunday, we know you will be coming now, won't you?
For the public, I will make myself available.
Thank you.
That's why we love
job.
you. Thank you very much, Dr. Alero Roberts. Thank you.
Whoosh.